Highly successful individuals are always focused on what's next, but they often don't take time to reflect on their journey and how far they've come. I'm Craig Heatherly, host of the Path Less Traveled podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary leaders. Their success rarely follows a straight path, and that's what makes their story so remarkable. Now let's dive into this week's episode after a brief message from our sponsors. Looking for top talent in tech or professional fields? Avero Talent connects businesses with exceptional candidates, specializing in tailored recruiting solutions that match the right skills to your team's needs. Whether building a team or searching for a tough-to-fill position, Avero Talent delivers the expertise you need to hire smarter, faster, and with more confidence. Let us help you find your next star employee.
Success changes the game. Your business is growing. New opportunities, ambitious goals, greater impact. But growth brings complexity. More people to lead, more moving parts, less time and space to think and connect. And when leaders feel that strain, teams do too. At Cressy Leadership, we help leaders navigate those challenges. Through individual coaching, group training, and our Leadership Academy, we build the skills and strengthen the connections that make growth sustainable, helping teams communicate openly, tackle challenges together, and stay aligned on what matters most. Cressy Leadership. Envision what's possible.
Welcome to the Path Less Travel podcast. This week, we feature Michael Behrens, the president of Complexus Medical, a family-owned business with locations in Mishawaka and Plymouth, Indiana. Michael, thanks for joining the show. We're here in Plymouth, and we just got done walking through the plant. Great tour, beautiful facility. But being out on the shop floor, that's kind of where it all started for you, right?
Yep, it did. My dad bought the company in 1990, and I guess some of my earliest memories on Saturday morning was him waking me up and taking me into work. And I started on a broom and then kind of worked my way up through all the other machines there till after college. I ended up coming back here and taking over for him eventually.
Did you always know that you wanted to be in the family business? I know that's always the question. Do I want to go where my dad or my grandpa, the business that started? Like, was that a thought of yours?
Yeah, I can't ever remember wanting to do something different. I mean, I was introduced to it in a very young age. I took a liking to, I guess, manufacturing in general and then the machining side of things. And so I always had a dream of one day that's what I wanted to do, and kind of between my dad and myself put a plan together to make it happen, and it did. So pretty proud of that.
The plan. Tell me about the plan. I mean, was this a plan at an early age?
Yeah, probably an early, as an early teen. I don't remember the exact conversation of telling him, maybe he does, of me telling him I wanted to take over for him one day. And, he said, you got to do two things. First is you got to go get an education in something that pertains to this industry in some way. And so I did. I went to Purdue and got an engineering degree. I graduated there in 2008. And then he said, you got to go get your own job somewhere outside of the family business just to make sure you get some experience. And after you have that experience, make sure that coming back to Complexus was what I wanted to do. And so one day in 2011, he said, things are starting to pick up here. One day I want to be retired in Florida. So if you're coming home, come home. And I put in my 2 weeks, or maybe it was 4 weeks. I can't remember. And so in July of 2011, I came back to Mishawaka. I moved from Peoria, where I was working for Caterpillar, and started off as a sales manager, eventually VP of operations. And then as Dad started to take a step back, I was named president. I believe it was 2017. And I've been doing that president's role ever since.
That experience of working for a Fortune 500 company, bringing that to a smaller company, what was that like for you? I know that it's important to go and get experience somewhere else, but at a Fortune 500 company, what was that like?
I think two things. It taught me that I did not want to spend my life working for a Fortune 500 company. There tends to be just a lot of politics, a lot of things that get in the way of actually getting things done quickly. But on the other side of that, our largest customer is a Fortune 500 company. And so some of that knowledge, experience of being at one helped me work for one, right? So I can kind of understand how things work within a large corporate structure. That's helped me navigate that as we've grown that business.
A big thank you to Senior One Care for sponsoring today's episode. Founded in 2006 by Carl and Kyle Bossing, this family-owned business has provided compassionate in-home care for nearly 2 decades. If my family needed a caregiver, I'd call Kyle. With 6 Indiana locations, they give you the peace of mind while your loved ones receive the care they deserve. Learn more at senioronecare.com.
So, Complexus Medical.
Yep.
What do you guys do?
So I guess the elevator speech for that, Complexus Medical is a contract manufacturer for the orthopedic industry. So we do machining, assembly, welding of orthopedic surgical instruments, mostly for large joint, knee and hip. And then there's other segments of the orthopedic industry, probably after large joint would be spine. And then there's your sports medicine. So if you tear your ACL, get a shoulder, a rotator cuff, those things are called sports medicine. You've got trauma. So there's instruments and implants that, if you break your leg in a car accident or playing sports, there's a segment for that. So we're a bit unique in the orthopedic space. So like I said, you have instruments, you have implants. A lot of our competitors, a lot of contract manufacturers, they want that implant side of things. The volume is there and more of a consistency for orders. Implants obviously are not reused where most instruments are. So that ordering cycle tends to be more cyclical. But what we've kind of built the business around is doing the complex, and a very creative name, doing the complex instruments that are something not a lot of our competitors want to do. And additionally, it's helped us be not low-cost country proof, but at least low-cost country adverse. So a lot of our customers, when they take something that's got a lot of welds or the specifications and adhering to those matter most, they tend not to source that to a low-cost country or China's, India, South America. And so while there has been waves over time of kind of outsourcing or offshoring, we've kind of been protected from that just because we've built our niche in that segment of complex instruments.
You said you built the business, your second generation.
Yep.
Walk us through just the evolution of, even to where you're at today, just the product offerings and the things that you guys make. I mean, has it from day one, I'm guessing it wasn't this complex?
Sure. So my dad bought the company in 1990 in our original location. He bought it was a maybe 3,000 or 4,000 square foot shop, 6 employees. He bought it from a gentleman who was getting ready to retire and did not have his own succession plan. They were more in the general machining or tool and die industry. And then as some of that business started to be offshored, he went out looking for work. And as it happens, he bought a machine shop that was just north of Warsaw, which is the orthopedic manufacturing capital of the world, and started to get some overflow work for some other established contract manufacturers. And then as that kind of progressed and he proved himself in that industry, we began doing work directly for those OEMs. Way back when he bought it, it was called F&F Machine Specialties. So one of the things we did when I came back in 2011 is look at a rebrand, because by that time the company had kind of established itself as a major player in the complex orthopedic instrument space, but our name didn't really reflect that. So that was a cool thing for him and I to do together, which was rebrand the company. Here comes the next generation. And so, we kind of went full speed ahead as this is what we are. This is what we're known for.
The next generation. And one of the questions that I like to ask leaders is, what's next? And as you look into the next year, the next couple of years, I guess, where do you see Complexus Medical going? Anything that excites you more than the present day or even recent years?
Yeah, it's going to be an extension of our automation journey. So when you think of robotics, automation, it's been around it's not a new concept, but it has been historically or since its inception, something that was used for very high volume. Your automotive, some aerospace, but when you have a high mix and low volume, automation was not really something that was for you. And there's been some technology changes that have made that more applicable to businesses like Complexus. So about 3 years ago, we bought our first machine, which is robot tended or automated. We now have 5, and our plans going forward are to, become as automated as we can. One thing that when people hear automation, they think of less employees or taking jobs away, and we found that that's not really the case. What we're after is some of those hard to staff time frames. So your nights and weekends where it's more difficult to fully staff humans, we can kind of get more technical folks during the day and let those machines do their things at night and on the weekends.
Yeah, when we were walking through the shop floor, and I think you mentioned one of the machines was running just on weekends, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, we
fascinating.
have several 5-axis mills that can go many days, not without human interaction, but without actually stopping the manufacturing process. So at that point, the human is just kind of maintaining that operation.
So we're down here in Plymouth,
Yep.
part of the expansion about 5 years ago, I think you
Yep.
said. Tell me more about just kind of the strategic play on why Plymouth when the other location is in Mishawaka.
So we had been steadily growing. We moved to that Mishawaka location in 1996. And then in 2013, we doubled that location. And then with that expansion, we had put all of the property we had in Mishawaka was either parking lot or under roof. And so as time went on, we had filled that building with machines, people, manufacturing. And about that time, COVID came around. And we had a large portion of our customer base was saying, single site suppliers, suppliers that did not have the ability for business continuity should there be something with COVID or even natural disasters, that kind of thing. They were really looking to expand only with suppliers who had multiple sites. So Dad and I kind of looked around and said, well, here's what we're hearing from the customers. You can go out in our own shop and see we're full. It's time to go out and take that next step. We only had two choices. It was either merge or be acquired by someone larger or go out and do it ourselves. And so we chose the latter. So in 2020, we went out in search of another facility. We, more myself, because I'm here day to day, decided, going somewhere out of state or a plane right away was not really something we were ready to do.
Yeah.
Maybe not ever, but certainly not yet. And so we started looking in all directions of the compass, decided to move south, and ended up here in Plymouth. Marshall County's been great for us. It's been great to us. And so we bought that building in the summer, the building we're in now, in the summer of 2020. We took a few months to kind of make it our own, do some renovations. Lead times at that point there were some supply chain issues from COVID were a little bit longer. And so we put the first machines on the floor and we're operational the first part of 2021. And so since then, I'm not going to say we don't do any growth at all in Mishawaka. We've replaced equipment. Have hired more people, but really our focus in terms of expanding, especially on our automation journey, have all been here in Plymouth.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So the title of the podcast is The Path Less Traveled, and we're going to start to shift the focus a little bit more towards you and just your leadership journey. But when you hear that title, The Path Less Traveled, and you think about your personal leadership journey, what kind of things come to mind?
I've thought about that in terms of what this was, and I think, I don't know if it's the path less traveled, but my path has been very straight. I meet a lot of people who started off thinking they wanted to do one thing and then took a whole bunch of steps along the way. And for me, I've actually never worked a day in my life that was not either in or in support of manufacturing or machining, for that matter. So even, I took courses in college that had to do with machining. My jobs at Caterpillar was actually in a rotational program. So you got to switch jobs there every 12 to 18 months. And when I had the opportunity you didn't get to pick and definitely get that job, but I always applied for the ones that had something to do with machining, and I got them every time. And so I guess not a lot of people can say at whatever, 12, 13, 14, I want to do that. And then are sitting here at 40 and did exactly that. So I guess that's my path less traveled.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I mean, the path most traveled is the one that zigs and zags, and then you end up where you're at and you fall in love with it if you have a passion. And gosh, you look back 20 years like, wow, I didn't know how I fell into this thing. But yeah, that is a path less traveled, the straight line path. What is it about manufacturing and machining that has just drawn you to this? Was it just being exposed to it at a young age?
Yeah, I think it was being exposed at that young age. And then I kind of got I'll call it a big boy job earlier than most people. So being family owned, none of the labor laws applied to me. So as early as I can remember, I was operating, I guess, heavy equipment, not so much like the construction equipment we think of, but, big machines cutting metal. And I was a young kid, and I fell in love with just watching the machines, watching the CNC code go by, learning all of that. All my friends were working at retail or fast food, and I got to work in this, a machine shop, during high school and then as a young child. So I guess that's what caused me to just fall in love with that.
So being thrust into this a higher level position at an earlier age, I'm sure it had its challenges. When you think about leading people, you've known machining, you've known manufacturing since you were really young, but leading people is different. How was that journey for you?
I got the added caveat that I am leading people who I've known since I was 6 years old. We have a lot of longevity at Complexus. We've had some folks that have recently retired. Our VP of engineering is going to be, I think he just celebrated 34 years. And so, known some of these people since I was in kindergarten. And so that was a big challenge, coming back to the family business and having to lead people who used to lead me, not just as their position, but those actual people. So that was a big challenge.
I asked one of your teammates a question.
Okay.
Joan.
Yep.
I asked, explain to me, basically what Michael's superpowers are as a leader.
I can't wait.
Well, one of the things she said is, and actually I'll read quite a bit of it. He's sharp, quick-witted, speaks articulately. Michael's a visionary and courageous leader who embraces risk, empowers his team to take the initiative to drive change. You don't like excuses. Bring solutions, not problems, and a very loyal person to his team. When you hear that in a teammate's opinion of your leadership style, kind of what comes to mind?
I'm glad that's how people think of me. I mean, that's kind of how I come across. That's how I was raised, was no excuses and do what it takes to get it done. And so I guess I've kept that into adulthood.
Well, when you think about people that have impacted you and influenced like just this approach, I'm sure family comes to mind. Who all does come to mind? And is there a lesson that they taught you, that you learned, that would be worth sharing any mentors?
I mean, I think the easy out for that would be my father. Aside from that, I think, we mentioned how some of which relatively short time at Caterpillar, when I now look back over my 20-something years of being in the workforce. I guess Joan mentioned something about no excuses and come with me with solutions. I had one of my very first managers when I worked at Caterpillar, which was really one of my first managers. It wasn't my dad. He said, you can come to me with any problem, but don't come to me without having a solution first. It doesn't have to be the right one. It doesn't have to be the one that we're going to go with, but at least have an idea before you come and ask for my help. And so that was something that really stuck with me as a 22 or 23-year-old that I've kind of tried to live by and to manage by even to today.
Yeah, it's great advice. And as you look at advice, maybe 20 years ago, when you were coming out of college, what advice do you wish you would have received that you now know?
Can say this is maybe a unique answer for myself, but growing up, running machines and being interested in that technical side of things, and then saying, I want to run this business one day, I kind of stuck a little too close maybe to that by getting an engineering degree. If I could go back and talk to 18-year-old Michael, I would have said, you need to go to business school or finance school or something like that, because I've had to learn that along the way. That's been a big challenge for a technical engineering type guy to kind of get into the financial and manage the business from a financial side of things versus a technical side of things.
One of my mentors, he's got a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I think I actually mentioned it on the shop floor. Is that something, when it comes to leading or financials or any of the other things outside of the world that you were so focused in on growing up? Is that kind of how it should play out, or did you lean on somebody?
It's actually funny that you say that, because through a whole lot of series of events earlier this year, we ended up having to go on a search for our next controller CFO. And almost all the time when Dad and I talk, we're like, man, I wish I knew the financial side. Some people can look at an income statement or a balance sheet like I can look at a set of, CAD drawings.
Yeah.
And this year and going into next year, it's going to be a huge, we've decided to reinvest a lot of time and money into both of these facilities. We've actually recently just acquired kind of a business within a business, a product line from not a competitor, but an adjacent company. And earlier this year, when our previous controller left, we hired someone who had been with us during a maternity leave. And he's, in the later part of his career, and has really taken a role as being a teacher to kind of really the whole organization of how to run this business from the financial side of things and meld that with the technical expertise of everybody else. And so I guess that's true. When we were ready, the teacher appeared.
You're clearly in, I don't know if you would consider yourself to be in growth mode, but you're a growth-minded organization as you explain kind of where you guys were at when you first got back involved in the business to where you're at today with the 2 locations. That comes with a lot. And as a leader, you're having to say yes to things, you're having to say no to things. How do you balance the things that you say yes to and no to? Because you're getting approached with a lot of different, like a lot of stuff's falling on your plate. How do you decide what you say yes to and no to?
I think that has to do with so we are in growth mode. We've got this facility. We're just out there. It's empty floor space. Empty floor space makes no money. It doesn't help grow the business. So we're always trying to say, how can we expand the business and put more machines, more people on the shop floor? And for a long time, everyone's got their largest customer. It's very hard to say no to your largest customer, but at the same time, you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. There's a lot of market conditions that can happen through no fault of anyone that causes a big customer to have a change that affects you in a very negative way, or affects really the employees, which is who I'm always, most worried about. And so we've decided to, we've hired some more business development folks. We've invested in automation. And so we're really going out to expand our customer base. And so, it's time to start saying not no to our largest customer, but more yes to our new customers. And so that's the orders we're marching to going forward, especially into 2026.
Yeah. I want to shift the conversation a little bit as I see your bride out in the community quite a bit.
Okay.
You're really plugged into a lot of things locally, and it's great to see it. It's great to see the support that you have of so many different organizations. And I think as a leader, it's important to find areas of enjoyment and fun, like a break away from the action. For you, what does that look like? What does fun for Michael look like that you absolutely say yes to when it presents itself?
Well, you mentioned my wife, Amber. Amber and I think travel's our biggest source of enjoyment. So we've actually had quite a 2025. We got married in February. We went to Tahiti for our honeymoon. We just got back. I say just got back a couple months ago from sailing in Greece. We're getting ready to take the kids to Disney for Thanksgiving. And so I think for us, our biggest way to kind of break away and recharge is to do some fun travel together.
If you could pick one place to go to, where would that place be? Or do you just like mixing it up?
There's actually not a lot of places I would say no to. So I think what we've said is that we don't want to repeat anything. So we've talked about going to the Maldives. Amber got to spend a couple days for Rotary in Singapore and kind of thought the Asian thing was kind of cool. So we're kind of thinking about maybe a Thailand, Singapore vacation out in the future. So there's no place I would say no to for travel.
Yeah, I like that. Back to a leadership question for you. How are you working on yourself to grow your leadership potential and your effectiveness? Are there things that you're a part of, things that you subscribe to, things that you think about regularly, people in your world that help you, like just iron on iron, improve your skill set, help you think differently? I guess, how do you approach, getting to the next level of leadership?
In the past few years, podcasts have been a huge way for me to consume. Maybe between driving to work, especially when I come down here to Plymouth, I found it's more effective for me to listen. There's some podcasts out there where I try to listen to, folks that built businesses larger than mine, because that's kind of where I want to go, is always bigger in a growth mode. And so I've kind of turned to podcasts to see how do other leaders do that and what can I do to do some of their same things.
Any recommendations?
Yeah, I sent one to you this morning. It's called How I Built This. And so it's literally they're usually about an hour and 30 minutes, and they get a founder or founders of companies you've heard of, which is kind of cool, with Starbucks, Southwest Airlines, and they just have that guy or gal or people sit down and say, how did you take this from your garage or your desk or an idea into these larger corporations? And, a lot of them are the same things I see here at Complexus. They just had a couple breaks that they went global. And so, what can I do to follow them?
Well, I'm sure on that podcast, there's things that you can relate to as being, building a business, and things that maybe you can't relate to through your experience. And then also things that you've observed. What's a leadership kind of pitfall that you would have somebody look out for as a young person?
Sure.
That comes to mind.
I think coming from, maybe a smaller business where we started and then now to where we're at, I always wanted to be You don't want to be not the smartest person in the room, but it takes, I think, the next level of leadership to say, maybe I'm not the expert in this. And so I would need to surround myself with others who are the expert in that side of things. And so I think right now, if I look back over the last 5 years, maybe a little longer than that, I've really surrounded myself or Complexus with some leaders who are really experts in engineering and sales and quality. Now in the finance side of things where, I can lead all of these people, but I don't have to be the smartest guy in the room for every single subject.
Is there a moment in time that you were faced with the reality that, gosh, you need to go find somebody with this type of skill set to help round out the team, to take the organization to another level? Any point in time come to mind for you, or a conversation that comes to mind of the recognition that, we need to maybe look outside of this, or it's something I need to, or somebody on our team needs to develop this skill right now because it's a need?
A lot of that's happened in this past year, where it was kind of, Dad and I have had some conversations of either, how do we take this to the next level? And one of those was, if we want to start amassing a larger customer base, historically, all of the sales or business development was done by he or I. And so, now we have 2 locations. It's becoming something we needed to have someone focus exclusively on that. I can handle some of our larger accounts, our largest customers, but when it comes to going to be on the road and focus on, those meetings and things that bring on new customers, I don't have that kind of time anymore. So we've got someone in that role. They just started recently. And then again, we mentioned our CFO, who's also joined in the past year. Mm-hmm. And some of the things we're doing next year or that we've done just in 2025, it's been a huge help to have him on board to help us navigate that.
Was that something that you had been putting those 2 positions or positions like that, something that you've been putting off for some time, or did you just reach the point where you're like, holy cow, we need this right now, we need to make this investment? Or was it something that took some time to get around?
It took some time.
Yeah.
And then, and it was, I guess for us deciding to invest in a piece of equipment, that's my forte. I know, I know that, but then, deciding to invest in people or maybe a salary range you're not used to, that's a big hurdle to get over. But at least so far, every time we've taken that leap, it's paid off. So we're going to keep doing it.
This episode is brought to you by Mosier Consulting, the powerhouse behind some of the most innovative technology solutions in Northern Indiana. For 30 years, Mosier has been delivering best-in-class solutions. If you're a leader in your company, Mosier is your partner in progress. With deep expertise in analytics, AI, managed services, Microsoft, IT savings, and strategic consulting, they don't just support your tech, they elevate your entire business. Mosier Consulting, technology experts, real results. Visit mosierit.com to learn more. A couple final questions as we round out this interview. If you think about the things that you've accomplished in your time and here at the company, and this could be personally, it could be even professionally, what are you most proud of?
Sure. I think probably what I'm most proud of today is in the past 10 years, there has been a lot of consolidation within our industry. There's been a lot of mergers and acquisitions. There's been a lot of private equity that's come in and kind of consolidated. And so to be, at least in the United States, one of the few, and I can count probably most of them that are our competitors that are still owner operators, right? Whether it's first generation, second generation, family held. And so we even hear that from our customers. For a while, it was they wanted to go to the bigger, more consolidated companies. And now in the past 2 years, when I go out to see a new customer and we get to tell them, it's me. I'm the owner operator. My parents were still involved. They now appreciate that again. And so having the family owned aspect be one of the differentiators in our brand is probably what I'm most proud of.
And how's that been? Being in your seat as a business leader, as the president, and knowing that consolidation's happening. Can't imagine the number of emails and phone calls and stuff that comes your way to be a part of that.
Yeah.
But you guys you remain family owned. Do you mind sharing just kind of the vision there?
There's the pride aspect of it. I personally know other owners who have, whether they didn't have a succession plan, they didn't have a second generation or that key person that wanted to take over. And it always starts off kind of rosy, right? You get this influx of money, you get an influx of new ideas, and then it always goes sour. And so have we been approached? Yeah, today, yesterday. I'll be approached tomorrow. But the fact that while that was all going on, we've still been able to grow and be known in the industry for our family ownership, I think that helps, keep the drive going.
Well,
I'm also only 40 years old. I can't retire tomorrow. You can only do so much golfing and fishing and vacation. In the past couple of years, it was always my dad and I. And then the last couple of years, my middle sister has kind of joined the team. She's kind of grown into a leadership role. And so that's been, a breath of fresh air for me to have another family member in there to rely on. And so I just want to keep doing this.
My final question for you is, before I get your final thoughts, is, sitting in your seat, the things that consume your thoughts. Not every listener is a business leader. A lot of listeners are learning for the first time what Complexus Medical is. But kind of help us tap into your mind and just the things that consume your thoughts from the seat you sit in of running a business, because I don't think it's truly understood or even appreciated.
Yep.
The things that you're juggling.
I can't say I have a lot of sleepless nights, but I think the number one thing that I worry about as not only just the leader, but also the owner is, there's 120 families out there that depend on the success of this company, which is ultimately mine, to put food on their table, to take their kids to Disney World. And so I think me, especially in the last 2 years, I can't say in my time in the workforce, I've ever seen as much change with AI, with the changing in the education system, just all of these changes that are happening at a rapid pace. What does that mean? How do you stay ahead of that? How does things that, you think of AI or automation that you always thought they were coming for, the white collar jobs. How do you bring that into manufacturing? How does AI factor into that? And so I think that's our next phase, is integrating some of these fast growing technologies into Complexus. And they are coming. There is AI out there that's writing CNC code. There is AI out there that's helping do our quoting process. They're taking huge chunks of time out of that. And so is it going to take jobs? Is it going to make jobs? I don't know. But I think that's right now what keeps me up at night, is all of this rapid change out there with technology, and how is that going to be embraced by Complexus?
So how do you stay in tune? How do you stay up to date? Like, what is there a source that allows you to kind of a little bit more comfort that you rely on, or is it just constant education?
Constant education. There's a group of contract manufacturers out there that I stay in touch with. We see each other at trade shows. I was just at a customer event where there's some friendly competitors out there, and we talk about all the things I just said. And there's we all kind of use the same softwares. There's user groups for that. What is the next evolution of all that? So I like I said, I consume a lot of podcasts, and I try to keep my ear to the ground with other industry leaders to see what they're seeing, or how we can, kind of bounce ideas off each other.
Yeah. Well, you get the final thought here, and I like to close it out with that. And we can talk about, feel free to share anything about your business, leadership journey, anything completely unrelated to those two. You get the final thought. So go ahead and close us out.
Sure. Again, thank you for having me on it. It's kind of sparked a lot of things in my head, and it's helped me get excited about the future here. So 2026 is going to be a big year for Complexus. We're going to make a lot of investments in equipment and people. I think just last week, we've kind of decided to make some moves in our organizational chart. I was able to give out 3 promotions last week. So there's 3 people. 2 of them have never been managers before. They get to start their management journey, and maybe they'll listen to this and take some of what I've learned along the way as they start theirs.
Yeah. Well, no, thanks for sharing that. And it's so cool. This was a great experience, because you mentioned earlier, your path was a straight line. And that's been so unique. That stands out amongst any of the other interviews that we've had. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit more about the Complexus Medical history, your leadership journey, and just where you guys are going. So thank you again.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of the Path Less Travel podcast with the president and owner of Complexus Medical, Michael Behrens. Until next week, have a great day.